So this is our chapter 2, and this is the crime scene and the objectives for the unit. So these are, you can read through these in your notes. This is going to be my first video of unit 2 and our vocabulary, which you'll find on the Quizlet. All right, so the most important part of this unit is the low cards exchange principle. And so that means that whenever you come in contact with someone or an object, you're leaving a trace of you behind. Whether it's a fiber or a hair or a fingerprint, there's always going to be something left behind. And the intensity and the duration and the nature of that interaction is going to determine the amount of substance left behind. So like in a scuffle, right, or at a fight, you're going to leave a lot more material behind, whether it be hair, fibers, and so on. So we have different types of evidence. We have what's called direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. The direct evidence is like your firsthand observation, right? So this is your observations, right? This is, so observation, sorry for my terrible handwriting. So this is like an eyewitness, right? So your eyewitness testimony. And then we have our circumstantial evidence, and that is evidence that can be used to imply a fact, but not necessarily prove it. So you can imply that someone was at the crime scene, but you cannot say for sure that they did it. That will be called circumstantial evidence. So we can now just further, refine our types of evidence, right, between direct and circumstantial. Circumstantial evidence falls under two categories. We have our physical and our biological. Right, our physical evidence, right, could be, again, like a fiber at the scene. Biological could be blood left at a scene, for example, right? So biological meaning come from the body, physical meaning pretty much everything else. So then that kind of evidence now can then be even further narrowed into what we call class evidence or individual evidence. Class evidence narrows an identity to just a group of people. So all blonde-haired people, for example. Don't mind the announcements going on in the background. So all blonde-haired people would be considered class evidence, right? So I could say the perpetrator of the crime was blonde. Okay, but that doesn't narrow it down to a person. That only narrows it down to a group of people. Blood type is another one, right? So that's whether or not you have type A, B, or O blood type. Now, individual evidence narrows it down to just one person. So we can have DNA is great individual evidence, as is a fingerprint. Right? Those are really good. Those are our best individual evidence. Identical twins do have the same DNA, but they do not have the same fingerprints. So fingerprints and DNA are great individual sources of evidence. It narrows it down to just one person. So our crime scene investigative team consists of police officers, crime scene investigators, medical examiners, detectives, and then we have our specialists, right? They all work together, and that's just the crime scene team, right? In solving a crime, we have the police units, and then we have our forensic units, and then we also have the district attorney's office, and we have prosecution and defense. So they all work together. And so the 7 S's of the crime scene, right? These all start with S, right? Securing the scene. That's the first thing you have to do. You have to make sure that no one is entering or exiting that scene without being documented. And right, so you want to make sure you preserve that scene. Separating the witness, right? You don't want your witnesses corroborating stories. You're going to scan the scene, right? That's that once over, taking a look around and trying to make a plan. And then sketching the scene, right? So that's also going to involve our photography piece, right? You want to take some photos in there. You want to preserve the scene as is before you start removing the evidence. The 6th step is the searching for the evidence piece, right? That is where we're going to have very specific search patterns, and we're finding the evidence. And then the last step is that collection of the evidence piece. And then beyond that, after you collect the evidence, then there becomes then the analysis of the evidence and putting the crime together. I think that summarizes our first set of notes for this unit. And so in our next video, we'll continue discussing the crime scene.